Right on. So thanks again for the introduction. I'm Megan Lamson, and Megan Lamson Leatherman now, and I do have the honor of working with a solid team of humans with Hawaii Wildlife Fund across Hawaii Island and Maui. It is not a one-woman show. We're pretty much volunteer powered, which I'll get to talk to a bit later. And if you do have any questions throughout this, I guess feel free to write them in the chat. I'm not sure if I can see that while I'm presenting, but I think they'll add to our discussion after this. So, a little outline of what I'll be talking about, focusing mostly in on our plastic pollution problems and pollutions, the issues that marine wildlife has, that marine debris has on our marine wildlife and coastal ecosystems, and then what we can all do individually or collectively in groups like this to make a difference. So with that, for those of you, I do see a couple of Hilo faces in the crowd in addition to Keith, so that's awesome. And for those of you who are less familiar with Hawaii Wildlife Fund, we are a very small, but I'd like to say mighty team of scientists and artists, cultural practitioners, volunteers, environmental educators, all who have come together to protect native wildlife. So we do not want to be in the business of trash collection. I hope that I will be out of a job in terms of cleanup coordination in the coming years, but I don't see that as happening immediately. So it's a little bit about us. Our team from left to right, I won't introduce everyone, but it is important to acknowledge our co-founders. On the left, Hannah Bernard, and on right side of her is William Gilmartin. And so we were founded by them. They were both working for National Marine Fisheries Service, NOAA, and began our nonprofit. It'll be 25 years ago at the end of this month. And Hannah is our fearless leader. She's our executive director and works on Maui. And we have a half dozen contractors who work on both Maui and Hawaii Island, and part-time staff. So myself, I work part-time on Hawaii Island, and Magda in the blue polo shirt works part-time on Maui. So we really are small and are only able to be as effective as we are due to our business and community partnerships like that we've developed with Keith and the Hilo, South Hilo Rotary Club and other schools and community members. So thank you. Thanks for everyone being here. And a very brief snapshot of our nonprofit and some of the projects in terms are broad. And so I will be focusing in on marine debris. However, on Hawaii Island, we also do a fair amount of estuary and anchoring pool restoration work, coastal strand, native dry forest restoration, environmental education, as well as supporting our monk seal rehabilitation teams and hawksbill sea turtle protection efforts, mostly on Maui, but also some of the stranding stuff here on Island. And I'm not sure, I think we have Oahu folks here as well as Hawaii Island. I'm a little bit less familiar with this group. I'm going to launch the rest of the talk primarily into plastic pollution, but if you do have any questions about any of the other things that we do, I would encourage you to visit our website and shoot us an email on the contact form. It'll go straight to Hannah and I, and we'd be happy to provide more information and potentially kind of collaborate on other projects in the future. So with that, I also want to say I recognize that this is more of a broader sustainability group and network in Hawaii. And, you know, like I mentioned before, we're a small wildlife organization. So really, we are pulling plastic pollution from the shoreline because it is a threat to our nearshore and marine resources. But coral reefs, for example, are stressed by any number of things right now, from climate change. You see the Falabra head right here that is bleaching because of warming waters. There's a lot of stressors on our oceans and our nearshore reefs, and it's not just plastic pollution, it's chemical contaminants, it's sedimentation, overdevelopment, overfishing, and I'm not going to burden you with this huge weight because I know a lot of you on this Zoom call are familiar with some of these things, but marine debris is a stressor that we can do something about. So a little bit easier, and it's less vague and intimidating. So oceans connect all of us, especially those of us who live and love and work and breathe in Hawaii. As you know, we're one of the most or the most isolated archipelago in the world. And yet, because the Pacific Ocean has a number of these gyres, and we are closest to the North Pacific subtropical high, this convergence zone, kind of an area where there's less winds, but floating objects, including biotic communities, plankton, et cetera, will end up in these regions, in these convergence zones. And just our close proximity to the eastern garbage patch that you might have heard is twice the size of Texas and so on and so forth, has kind of ended up bringing us debris items from around the North Pacific Basin, from all sorts of different countries and places, and various different shapes and sizes. But just to remind us, we are all connected by this ocean, and it's responsible for over half of the oxygen that we're breathing. And so it behooves all of us to take better care of it. And with that, I put this up here just because the Hawaiian archipelago and our location in the Pacific, and in relation to the oceanic currents, the Kuroshio current in Japan, North Pacific current, California current, how it all wraps around Hawaii, and the whole archipelago, the whole chain acts like a sieve, and because primarily pushed onto shore, plastic pollution and other debris items wash ashore in the northeast corners. And on Hawaii Island in particular, we're getting it on the southeast corner. But what is marine debris? I guess I should have started off right off the bat. Thankfully, more and more media and environmental education curriculum are including this. When I first began with Hawaii Wildlife Fund a little bit over 12 years ago, it wasn't something that was as well known or talked about. So NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, define marine debris as any man-made object that finds its way into the ocean or waterway. So this would be inclusive of things like lumber, even though they're made of products that were once living. They have been fabricated now and turned into lumber, for example. But we are less concerned with lumber when it washes ashore, unless it's coated in chemical contaminants. But marine debris does come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes, colors, and types. It is not all plastic, but we'll talk about it. Everything from small toys, action figurines, which are more common than you might imagine, to a scattering of other objects that are mostly unidentifiable, some of which you can identify, like the detergent bottle that comes from a location in China, or this car bumper that comes from a vehicle purportedly, probably from washed in by the Halaea current. But interestingly enough, with this, it was still valid when it washed in. So I always think that that's a weird story, because I think it washed in November and the license tag was still registered through February of the next year, 2013. I think that's it. But so the vast majority of the objects, however, do not have any sort of branding, don't have any sort of writing or identification that we could associate it with a particular place. However, a fair amount of it is related to our fishing industry, by weight especially. So we'll touch on that a little bit later. But kind of broad brush take-home message that I'd like for us to think about and maybe discuss later is that, yes, while marine debris is a global problem, we talked about debris items floating in from all over the North Pacific, all over the world, that end up here in Hawaii from container spills or whatnot. There really are local solutions. So we can, let's not let this overwhelming problem disable us. We really need to take action, and there's things that we can do about it. So I am a data-driven numbers person, so I will be presenting you with a fair amount of numbers. So hopefully some of you can appreciate that. It is kind of gross, the amounts and overuse of plastics that we are seeing every year with each and every year. And so plastic was first created in the early 1900s, a Bakelite, that really didn't take off until after World War II. And so as you can see, we're producing, in 2010, we were producing something like 5 to 13 million metric tons entering the ocean. So a metric ton is 2,204 pounds. So a million metric tons is just so much more debris than I can even imagine. And that was 11 years ago when that data was collected. And so cumulatively, you're seeing on the chart right there, the cumulative plastics production is just going up, 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 almost exponentially now, or more, well over 10 billion tons. So more billion tons than we have people pretty soon, which is frightening. So with that, I will give you an optional take home or homework assignment. And I think Keith was going to drop this in the chat. There is an excellent less than 6-minute video available on YouTube through National Geographic called A Brief History of Plastics and How It's Changed Our World. And we use this in the classroom, but it's also really well worth your time. So if you're so inclined, go ahead and watch that later. But other research has shown, and relatively recently, that through modeling, they estimate that around 90% of the plastics in our world's ocean today, as of 2015, when the data was collected, come from 10 catchments, so 10 river catchments, and 8 of which are in Asia. However, it doesn't mean that we are not accountable, and that is not, and I share that because I want to present the most relevant science available, but it doesn't mean that we're not accountable, because if we, up until a couple of years ago, we recycled the vast majority of our plastics, at least from this island, were shipped to a sorting facility in Oregon, and then they were sorted again and sold to the highest bidder, which was generally places in Asia like China. And so who's to say that this waste wasn't actually our waste that we quote unquote disposed of properly or recycled, that was shipped across the ocean, either lost in a container spill or through a river in one of these catchments. So that up there just to know that marine debris, a lot of it isn't actually originating from the ocean. It's not stuff necessarily that is lost at sea intentionally or accidentally. A lot of it is coming from land and washing into the ocean. So all the more reason to empower us to do something here where we live in our land. So I guess that's a good launch into more research, and then I'll try to tone it down with the data and the science. But along with a couple of researchers from Hawaii Pacific University and several of us cleanup coordinators throughout the state, we sent some samples to the new Center for Marine Debris Research in Oahu through HPU, and they did a polymer analysis. And so that is trying to identify just what types and levels of plastic are washing up at various beaches, various environmental compartments. So samples taken from the sea surface, samples taken from the coastline, samples taken from the sea floor, like in the benthos right there in the sand next to the coral. And so unsurprisingly, they found that debris sorted itself based on polymer type. And so this isn't surprising to me because we've been playing the sink or float game with plastics in the classroom with kids for a long time. And so things that, not all plastics will sink, and not all plastics float, but half of them will sink. But the things that are floating, if you're looking at this diagram right here, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse, but the sea surface, if you can imagine, it's on the windward side. So the Hilo side of our island, for example, the things that we see at Camilo are a lot of the rigid, hard floating plastics. So the polyethylenes, polypropylenes. Whereas in Kona, like the leeward sides of the island, you're going to see a lot more land-based litter, things like cigarette butts, cellulose acetate, that is, or polystyrene, the foam containers that have been expanded, things that are lost like literally right there. And so debris will sort itself out based on its windage and its flotation, like where it is in the buoyancy of the ocean, and how much it's being pushed with currents versus wind. And so it's sorting itself out. This is all really fascinating to chemical scientists, and possibly not everyone here, but I thought that was interesting, and it allows for us to find more information in terms of if we're going to recycle this stuff, if we're going to try to like upcycle it, what it's made of is really important. So with that, why are we doing this? We're a wildlife organization. We are not trash collectors. We're doing it because plastics really do present hazards to marine wildlife and terrestrial wildlife as well. But things like entanglement like you see in this honu or monk seal, ingestion like you see the bite marks out of that slipper at the bottom, or the albatross chick that is full of plastics that its parents had fed it, or smothering on coral reefs, snagging, and also new vectors, new ways for aquatic invasive species to find their way into our ecosystems. Plus, ingestion and chemical components. There are so many things in addition to the plastic polymers. There's so many things that the plastics industry puts into plastic, make it softer, or make it harder, or make it, for example, not fade in sunlight. Things like oxybenzone that we've already now taken out of our sunscreens are in the plastics that are in your food containers and in the labeling, and now the fish are eating it and we're eating the fish. So even if plastic might be inert, some of the stuff that they put in there is not. So frightening, because we are also part of that food chain, and this impacts us as well. But taking it back a little bit closer to home, this is kind of the story of how we got started on Hawaii Island, because our co-founder, Bill Gilmartin, was in charge of caretaking the Hawaiian monk seals in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands for years during his career with NOAA. And so he was informed when the first pup was reported, monk seal pup on Hawaii Island was actually at Kamilo, just south of the point. And this is not that monk seal, but this is just an example of why monk seals, for whatever reason, they like to hang out near nets, whether it's because they eat the fish that are attached to nets or they just like laying out near things. They become a huge entanglement issue. And so in 2001, when he went down there to kind of protect and observe and caretake that monk seal and pup, he just realized what an issue this particular very remote area was so impacted with plastic pollution from all over, and was inspired. This one person was inspired to really make a difference. And so because of him, we are nearly 300 tons removed on island, because he wasn't afraid or intimidated and started a cleanup. So bringing it back, or bringing it forward, and how this connects to like the greater picture. Plastic is really intimately connected with climate change. And so if we want to protect our coral reefs into the future, so our mo'opuna can still see them, for example, and we can still fish from them and they still protect our islands, we really need to curb our plastic addiction. Plastics are responsible with the harvesting of oil, and then the transport of this into the facilities, and the transport of products to us, and then the disposal, whether that's incineration or landfill, or then recycling, and then all of the chemicals involved. Every step of the way has a carbon footprint. And it's really important for us to connect that, because the vast majority of plastics are made from petroleum, and there are plant-based plastics, and clearly those are better, but it's intimately connected. So if we're concerned about sea level rise, if we're concerned about global warming, we need to curb our plastics usage and consumption overall. So another take-home message. Stop with that. But what are we doing about it? Collectively, we have removed over 350 tons from the shores of Hawaii Island, Maui, Midway, and the French Frigate Shoals with help. And that's 299.1 tons from Hawaii Island, and we just hit the 350 ton mark statewide this year. And so we're hoping with the next cleanup or two, we'll hit the 300 ton for Hawaii Island mark. So really, it's just an amazing amount of ash that washes up with every type, generally. And so our biggest and best solution, our most powerful tool, is actually our man and woman power, our volunteer effort. And so we use the beach cleanups not as a Band-Aid solution, but also as an educational opportunity for folks to, go down to the beach and realize it's not all fishing debris. There are toothbrushes, there are food wrappers, there are, single-use plastics utensils. There's things that we use in our everyday lives that are littering our shorelines and now part of the ecosystem. And so they're things that we can, as individuals or families, businesses, or community members, do something about, and then charge our legislators, inspire them to also make rules at a local and international level to change this diet, change the system, change the cycle. So we have beach cleanups to handle kind of the small, medium size debris items. We have hosted cleanups all over Hawaii Island, little on Maui, mostly at Ho'okipa and Ka'ehu. And I'm gonna let that person in. Welcome, Christy. So we have cleaned up all over the island, but as you'll see in a future slide, the amount of debris really is focused on the southeast corner. So if you can see my mouse right around here. So since I have been coordinating cleanups on Hawaii Island and keeping track of data, obvious there, I'm focusing mostly on that. Okay, so this is what it looked like when we started. This was about cleanup in 2005. So we started in 2003, but what Camilo kind of looked like. And just our various groups from school group. This was visiting Hawaii Outdoor Institute group. This is a group of Hawaii Community College students from Hilo and community members. It's all just about empowering folk to help part of the solution, both on this beach cleanup Saturday or Sunday, as well as when you come back home and in your consumer lifestyles. So on average, our data over 10 years, our volunteers are collecting about 80 pounds each, and we are very conservative with our numbers. We've weighed many, many bags. And so when I throw these figures out there, we're not exaggerating. If anything, these are undercounts, these are underestimates of what has truly been collected. Like I mentioned earlier, we're just shy of 1 ton away from hitting our 300-ton benchmark, and we hope to celebrate that along with our 25th anniversary on March 28th. So there soon, and then hopefully we don't hit our 350 benchmark too shortly thereafter, because we'll all be turning off the tap plastic pollution by the end of this, right? Okay, so net recoveries are another tool that we use. So we probably have 1 or 2 community or like a Rotary cleanup, a community group or school group cleanup month, and then we'll try to go in between the cleanup events and do net recovery patrols. And so these are really targeted efforts that we go to areas of known debris accumulation, or somebody has called into our marine debris hotline and said, Meg, Bill, Nahea, we have a net here, it just washed in, come get it. And so we try to get down there as soon as possible. This net in particular was reported to us after a group of paddlers found it and saw it, and between UH Hilo Marine Option Program folks and some of the wahine from the Kamehameha Canoe Club in Hilo removed it, and then we hauled it away from that point. So our net patrols are mostly in Ka'u and occasionally in Kohala. And so they entail using a winch mounted at the top of our truck. So normally you see winches on the front end, but it's on the top of the truck. And then we actually use a logging hook and a 100-foot metal cable to pull derelict fishing nets off the coastline. And then we've got this customized ramp system on our dump bed to pull it up into the truck. And so we purchased this truck thanks to the generous donation from a foundation who gave us a $50,000 grant to buy this truck and get it all customized to do exactly what we do. So it's lifted, it's got big burly tires, and we drive all over lava rock and replace our tires often. This is our first pickup that we have had on island, first new truck ever, and it already looks pretty awful and pretty beat up. And once you join us for a cleanup, you'll kind of know why. But from there, we bring it to the Waiahinu transfer station, where the county has allowed us to store these nets. And we're trying to use these, and we'll, as much as possible, repurpose them for reuse, gardens, covering cargo loads when you go to the dump. But the majority of them since 2005 have been saved to ship to Oahu for the NOAA Nets to Energy Partnership. And so we have shipped 13 containers now, over 100 tons of derelict fishing net debris, which we estimate at like 51% of our almost 300 tons by weight are derelict fishing and line and net debris item bundles. And so it isn't all fishing, it is also from cargo and shipping industry, but a lot of it is fishing, and a lot of it is not from here. So it's not like our local Hawaii fishermen. These are coming in from elsewhere in the Pacific. So that's worth noting as well. this is not the best solution, and we are still looking for different alternatives. I'll talk about that a little bit later when we talk about recycling and upcycling. But for now, that's what we're doing. And if anyone on island has a need for nets, let me know sooner than later, because we're going to ship another container. We talked about the middle-sized stuff, and we talked about the large derelict fishing nets, but now what about the small stuff? And so this is the really sort of ecologically frightening, especially on a toxicological level, issue. It's the scale is grand and they're really, really small, and what do you do with it? So ideally you have a plastics magnet or a plastics vacuum, and that's exactly what these engineering students decided to do, is make a very sophisticated marine debris removal machine, which they did after 2 years of planning and talking back and forth on the phone with Bill about how you would use the flotation of the plastics washing up at Camilo, sort and sift and strain plastics from sand, and then leave the sand but capture the plastics. And so we have this machine on island. It is the prototype. It is imperfect. It weighs about 3,000 pounds. It is really gnarly and hard to move around. Getting to Camilo is a real hassle. It's awesome that they did this, and we are still using it. We're hoping to move it to Oahu sooner than later, where it will be more effective on beaches that are way, way, way easier to access. And the studies that we did proved it to be over 97% effective, capturing things 4 microns or smaller. So 4 microns or larger. So that is like smaller than the size of a human hair. So really crazy. And there's some videos online about that too, if you guys would like to see. Donna or Keith can follow up with you on that later. So what's our impact? What have we done? I'm throwing numbers at you, but just so you can kind of visualize that. This is our effort kind of by project year since 2003. And the derelict fishing nets or the net line bundles are in blue. The non-nets and lines are in yellow. And you can see we're going, 100,000 pounds was the first year. It kind of got the backlog. As far as we know, no one else had done a large scale cleanup at Camilo before then. And the numbers are pretty consistent. Since that time, folks had asked if there was any impact to the Great Japan Tsunami about 10 years ago. And we did see a fair amount of large debris items. We're still getting some of the large fish boxes and oyster buoys from that event. The truth be told, there was a whole lot of plastics in the ocean from Japan, from Korea, from China, from California, from humans before the tsunami. So that might be the blip that we saw statewide in 2017, or it might just because, the blip you see there might just be because that was the highest amount of beach cleanups. If you see 54 on top of it that we had thrown in any given year up until that point. And I didn't have time to fully update this chart, but if you were curious, we got 57,000 pounds during 70 cleanups on island in 2019. We got 23,000 pounds during 45 cleanups last year. And this year so far, we've hosted 8 events and removed nearly 6,000 pounds of debris on island. So that's kind of what we're up to. This is what it looks like on a map, and the impact that for 11 years of data when we had an intern who knew how to do fancy maps with GIS. And here again, you're seeing sort of the accumulation hubs happening on the southeast corner. So because of the trades and the current. So probably going into the weeds with the debris data, but another thing that we're doing are these standardized debris surveys about once a month, on average maybe 10 a year. And so we're actually counting and categorizing every debris item over a bottle cap or size or larger. So not the microplastic stuff, but anything an inch or larger. And we've been doing this pretty systematically since September 2016. And so when I just uploaded our data from last month, we're finding the average is decreasing because Camilo's been very clean lately, but we're going to the set area over and over again to kind of get an idea of accumulation and trends and composition over time. But in summary, it's 94.4% plastic. And so this is why I kind of use plastic pollution interchangeably with marine debris, because I feel like marine debris is almost like a corporate word, like mask the problem. Because the problem is not the lumber that's washing up in general. This is what it looks like at that stretch of beach on a dirty day, and this is after we do our debris survey. And thankfully it's not looking that dirty right now, but we found upwards of 6,900 pieces on that 100 meters. That's an average of, you know, a little bit less than 3 pieces per square meter, which is kind of shocking. This was the debris data kind of summarized, mostly plastic. Also, we do get glass fragments and other items, but most of them are under 1%. So here again, plastic pollution. That was from a slide as of April. So we adjusted it with more data and it's gone down. So it's about 94%. But here you kind of see our debris accumulation. We had some spikes in the summer of 2017 and 2018. And it's been pretty much tapering down since. So it's a good thing, and I hope it stays down. Some other things we're doing on the prevention end, because the data has helped to support local legislation to reduce our plastics here, whether that be the plastic bag ban or the polystyrene foam ban, is to prove that we are connected. And even if we're not littering our own beaches, we might be littering our nearest neighbor, like Maui. We've done some brand audits, and we've got a grad student working with us now who's expanded this and really entered our data for the last several years. And so far we've sent a box of Nestle lids to them. We hope to at some point reach out to some of the other bigger corporate brands that we're seeing on our coastline, just to kind of like stop things at the source and maybe inspire folk to think of product designs, because there are alternatives to plastic that are more environmentally friendly. At a statewide level, NOAA's kind of led the charge for our marine debris action plans. This is the first in the nation, Hawaii's action plan. We've been meeting actually remotely, virtually all month, every Tuesday this morning, to talk about the 5 goals. And thankfully, number 1 goal is to reduce sources of marine debris through prevention. So here again, source reduction. Like if your bathtub is overflowing, you don't start bailing, you turn it off and then you bail. And so that's kind of like envision that in our ocean. We really need to start preventing this stuff and researching it and reducing it, and then also dealing with the recovery and the response. So you could be proud to say that you're in the state of the first marine debris action plan, and it's actually items that are moving things forward, like local policy efforts that you are probably familiar with, like our cigarette bans and our plastic bag bans, polystyrene foam bans. They've really started for the most part at the county levels before they move statewide. We were really inspired by Senate Bill 522 that came out full sessions back and didn't get super far, but became a working task force group. And you know, rather than have a bill for every item, try to, like at a statewide level, reduce the things where there are alternatives to some of this plastic, petroleum-based plastic, single-use products. And so we're still moving forward, but we're doing it again in an island by island county way. And we're hoping, you know, that the bill, there's a bill passed in Oahu as well as Maui. We're hoping to get it for Hawaii and Kauai soon. So fingers crossed on that. Let me know if you want to be involved. And on another more kind of grassroots level, we've been working in the classroom with the marine debris prevention curriculum, on average in non-COVID years, reaching about 1,000 students per year on this island, and now actually also on Maui and virtually on other islands. And so working with the next generation to kind of acknowledge the problem and brainstorm solutions together. So we continue to do that. We've turned trash into treasure, like this. Doesn't look that big, but this Honu Perspectives mosaic is 4 feet by 6 feet tall and was made by some Girl Scout troops and our past cleanup coordinator, Maddie May with Upcycle Hawaii. This is 1,800 bottle caps collected in a handful of our beach cleanups, turned into an art and a messaging system. So Pam Longobardi there with her anchor of black plastic, which she found on the beach and are not recyclable in many locations, including here. And so two of our awesome volunteers and debris divas on island, in Hilo Maddie May with Upcycle Hawaii and in Kona Cat Crable with Nurdle in the Rough, are taking marine debris that they collect from some of our cleanups and elsewhere and turning them into local products. So we're all about that and creativity. We've shipped a whole container full of mostly blue plastic with our friends at Surf Rider Kauai to New York, where it was turned into a life-size humpback whale and installed in a canal in Belgium that I got to visit. And now I think in Shanghai, it's been traveling around. Yeah, so these kind of like, okay, we got the debris, now what are we doing with it? And so this is something we've been working on and talking about throughout sort of the greater marine debris community. You know, what is the best step, and what is next, and which one has the lowest carbon footprint? And so we've talked about, you know, saving some of the stuff for art and research, but then recycling and upcycling and what's happened and where are we going? And it's really been kind of like a changing landscape in the recycling world of plastics. You know, it's getting harder and harder to even recycle clean post-consumer plastics, but we do have hope that we can repurpose some of this stuff, but not in a way that we're going to be encouraging extra consumption of things that you don't need. Because here again, the idea is to turn off the tap and just stop being reliant on these wasteful single-use items. So with that, kind of gearing towards a close, but I hope I didn't overwhelm anyone here. This is a group of action, environmental action, and really rather than being depressed, I encourage all of us to be more proactive and part. So, you know, people have said like, well, why bother? It's just a Band-Aid. It's going to get dirty next week. Well, you know, it looks a whole heck of a lot better now in these after photos than it did, for example, when we started. This is a picture from the mid 1980s that our friend Antinoni took. And so, you know, one person can make a difference and it could absolutely protect, you know, native wildlife. You know, if you pick up that net and it doesn't wash back out and entangle a humpback whale that's visiting, this is worth it. So please join us, please get involved. If you're on islands, check out our website, or on Maui as well. We have cleanups there quarterly. But also, you know, love your own spot, adopt your own favorite beach or park or trail or place and take care of it. You know, be conscientious consumers and mindful in what you're purchasing, because every time you buy that plastic water bottle, it's telling the store owner that they need to buy more and purchase more, and you're getting involved in that. So there's not always alternatives, and there's a time and a place. Like with PPE right now, I do understand that there's a place for plastic. My dad is alive because of this jints in his heart, and I'm very thankful for that plastic. But you know, we can be more conscientious. So I will end that and acknowledge all of our many partners, all who can't be here. Put up this slide so there is still a little bit of time for discussion and any questions that you might have. So thanks for allowing me to talk so long, and I appreciate this opportunity to meet you folks and collaborate hopefully into the future.
Does anybody have any burning questions?
You don't have anybody right now, anything or anybody working on Kauai?
We do not, but we partner a great deal with Surfrider Kauai, and their team is absolutely amazing. And so I could put you in touch with Barbara Widener if you're not already in contact with her. And yeah, they do weekly net patrols, I think on Wednesdays. Scott is hosting them, and I know we've all had to dial back a little bit with cleanups. With the pandemic, we've been like trying to strike a balance. But yeah, if you want to drop me a line, I can put you in touch with them or whatnot. Awesome.
Great.
Yeah, just to touch on the Kauai, sorry, this is April. I didn't get to speak earlier because I was still working. I'm actually in my car driving. Hopefully I have enough reception. But we have been in contact with Barbara over there in Kauai, and we do have a Rotarian kind of champion the project over there. I believe we've identified 4 or 5 beaches that we're going to be doing the Rotarians at Work Day cleanup on April 24th. So if you want more information on that, shoot me your email in the chat and I'll touch base on that. But I wanted to say thank you to Keith for touching on the Rotarians at Work Day Ridge to Reef project, and how awesome was this presentation. I wish I was not working and driving so I could have taken more notes, Megan. I definitely want to talk with you offline after this. Thank you so much for the presentation. Awesome stuff.
There is a
Absolutely,
recording,
April,
April.
yeah.
So you can.
Yeah, I
partake in.
can
We're
pass it.
being recorded.
Yeah, I can
Thing
pass
I
along the recording.
Say anything silly.
Yeah, I can pass along the recording to April, so you can revisit all the information, April.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that both of you two should definitely get together. I'm sure there's a lot of discussion that would happen.
I'm excited that the Rotary is hosting that statewide workday. So kudos.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I hope you can join forces with us. We're definitely on the same page with a lot of this discussion that you had today. I'm realizing now how bad the marine debris is from our reefs, and working with Ocean Defenders Alliance to do a cleanup out here on Magic Island. We have a dive shop owner who's offered to donate oxygen tanks for anybody who's interested in doing that. We have grain bags donated from Waikiki Brewing Company to help with our pickup, so we're not using brand new plastic bags. These are much more sturdy. I also have some sand sifters available for anybody on Oahu that would like to use them, especially for the east side beaches with the microplastics. But just an update on that whole program, we're looking to get Rotary clubs to sign up and commit to a location. Give us an estimation of how many volunteers everybody's looking to have, and just an approximation of what time you're looking to do the cleanup, so that we can get extra support from the city. They did offer to help us with additional pickups on that day of rubbish from city parks. So that's another huge asset to this ongoing project that we're doing. Naomi, I think you've been in contact with the mayor, and they also offered us for the program as well, right?
Right. Yes.
April, did you say you were on Oahu?
Yeah, I
Or
live in
Kauai?
north shore of Oahu. Sorry, I don't know if
Okay.
my reception is bad.
I do want to
north shore of
note, and I think
Oahu.
I touched upon it. Awesome. Yeah, so you're very familiar with Kahuku and the dirtiest beaches on your island and the stuff impacted by the trades. I just want to know, yeah, it'll be good to follow up with you, at least on this island. There's a delicate balance with underwater cleanups and the potential to do harm and just safety issues for wildlife and divers alike. So I'm all for removing monofilament line and some small debris items underwater, but I would encourage it to be done by a team of professionals or very competent water people and divers who are very familiar and comfortable with buoyancy control. Because at least here we've experienced people like a fin clip that didn't used to do any damage will now take out a whole coral head. And so it's risky business, but I'm excited that more people are doing it, but I'm just like cautiously optimistic and want to make sure it's done right and safely, because lift bags, you know, you can drown in like, you know, a meter of water, and lift bags kill people all the time. I'll just leave it at that.
Absolutely, and it's an area that I am not familiar with. I have never scuba dove, so that's why we partnered with what I'm considering like our expert in the reef cleanup. The Ocean Defenders Alliance is headquartered in California. They have 2 chapters, I believe, here on Oahu and 1 chapter on Hawaii Island. Also, yeah, the Surfrider Foundation over in Kauai, Barbara, the co-coordinator for the marine debris removal. Amazing. You know, so we're in the the advice and the instruction from the experts on that, because absolutely we want to leave it better than we found it. We don't want to kill any coral by any means, and we absolutely need to make sure that everybody is being safe. Because this dive is going to be happening April 24th, we understand that the tides can and will change during that time, and that's another thing that is on our radar too, is tracking the tide during, not only classifying the debris, but tracking the tide during that day as well, because sometimes the beach will be really dirty, tide rises, and it brings it all right back out to sea. So it's not that the beach is clean, it's just now that it's been washed back out to shore. So trying to monitor and keep all that stuff. But if there's any data collection that we can provide you guys, that would be awesome.
Okay, cool. We'll connect on that. And in general, at least the research that's been done, like in a standardized fashion, has found that actually like prolonged periods of consecutive onshore winds bring in the debris, whereas like large range and tide, so if you have like big flood events or the tidal range is larger, for example, it will actually be more likely to wash it out. So just as important as tracking your winds if you want to get the most debris when it's up. Yes, April,
Yeah, I
let's be
wonder
in
if the
touch.
rains lately it's been raining a lot. I wonder if that's had quite an impact on washing everything back out.
It does. Yeah, we experienced after the historic flooding in Hilo in August 2018, we got all sorts of albizia and like everything that washes down out through the rivers from the Hilo Puna side wash up onto the beach. So rains and large flood events are what bring a lot of the debris that might just be lining the rivers out into the ocean. And so that's how land-based debris becomes marine debris. So absolutely, John. That and natural disasters.
Is there a kind of time of year that you find more debris than other times of year?
Yeah, we find, so with the debris surveys where we're quantifying all the little stuff, the accumulation pulses seem to happen in the like Q2 and Q3. So at that like May or April through September, that range, we would get greater accumulation of things, whereas we would get less but bigger nets washing, like our huge, large derelict fishing nets tend to come up in like the winter storm. So December, January, February, March. This is not peer-reviewed research yet. This is anecdotal. It's complicated, yeah. It changes every year, every time.
Yeah. Okay, does anybody have any last final questions? Because I think we're reaching the end of 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I have a quick, hey Megan, my name's Talon. I thought you had a great presentation, so thank you for that. When you mentioned your microplastic collection system, you said it was like 3,000 pounds, right? And super heavy, hard to transport. It just reminded me of another presenter from a month ago. I forget his name. I forget what organization he worked for, but he designed a microplastic collection system where
Ray from Seed World.
Oh, Ray, we know Ray. Ray actually, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
Ray came down for our field testing, and he explained how he would do things a little bit differently, and actually gave the engineers some really good feedback, because our prototype, which is great and super highly effective, more so than his really awesome, easy, mobile, inexpensive creations, which are great, but ours also captured any floating debris, so like seeds and driftwood. And so working with Ray and like themselves and other chemical engineers, they figured out how to use pressure to then also sink the organics with the sand, the seeds and sticks that would have floated. So yeah, we know and love Ray. I think he's affiliated with the Surfrider Foundation in Oahu too, and he runs Seed Worlds, SEED. Great guy.
Nice.
Thanks, Talon.
No problem.
We're hoping he's going to want to operate the machine when it comes to Oahu. If one of you can tell him that.
Sure thing.
Any final questions? All right. Well, thank you so much, Megan. Yeah, I think you can tell that our club is